Malcolm X, a story many remember, but few truly understand. A father taken too soon, a mother pushed beyond her limits, a young man lost to the streets, a leader betrayed at the height of his voice, so much pain, so much silence left behind. Stay with me, because what really happened behind this film is far more heartbreaking than the story you were shown. Denzel Washington as Malcolm X. He stepped into a role so powerful it blurred the line between performance and prophecy. Some believed he didn't just portray Malcolm X. He became him, and nearly lost himself in the process. Denzel Hayes, Washington Jr., born December 28, 1954 in Mount Vernon, New York, was 37 when he took on the towering figure of Malcolm X in 1992 at a moment when his career and identity stood on the edge of transformation. Long before the cameras rolled, his life had already been shaped by fracture and discipline. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was sent to military school to avoid a path that could have led elsewhere. Years later, the role came not as a certainty, but as a convergence after Norman Jewison's early involvement and Spike Lee's determination. Washington emerged as the only actor capable of carrying the weight of Malcolm's evolution. In the film, he is not just the lead. He is the emotional axis, the embodiment of rage, awakening and ultimate clarity, guiding the audience through one of the most complex transformations ever put to screen. But the real turning point wasn't scandal, it was pressure. The expectations surrounding the film were immense, politically charged, and deeply personal. Washington immersed himself so fully studying speeches, rhythms, beliefs, that he later admitted the role stayed with him long after filming ended. The fear wasn't failure. It was becoming consumed by a man whose life ended in violence, whose voice still echoed with unfinished questions. After Malcolm X, Washington rose even higher, winning an Academy Award for Training Day and building a career defined by control, precision, and purpose while maintaining a remarkably private personal life. By 2026, he remains at the summit, respected, decorated, and unwavering. And perhaps that's the quiet truth. The man who once carried Malcolm's fire learned how not to be burned by it. Angela Bassett as Betty Shabazz. She built a career on portraying unbreakable women, but behind that strength was a childhood marked by separation, silence, and a father she barely knew, shaping everything she would later become on screen. Angela Evelyn Bassett, born August 16, 1958 in New York City, was just 33 when she stepped into the role of Betty Shabazz in Malcolm X, 1992, at a time when her career was still searching for its defining moment. Her earliest years were fractured, her parents separated, and she spent her infancy with an aunt in North Carolina before reuniting with her mother in Florida. Her father remained a distant figure, only reappearing briefly years later at a family funeral. That emotional distance became part of her internal language. Years later, after rigorous training at Yale, she crossed paths with Spike Lee's vision, earning the role not by chance, but by a quiet intensity that mirrored Betty's resilience. In the film, she is the emotional anchor, the calm within chaos, the quiet strength that steadies Malcolm's storm, embodying loyalty, dignity, and the unseen cost of conviction. The real turning point in Bassett's life wasn't scandal, but refusal. In an industry that often reduced black women to stereotypes, she made deliberate choices to reject roles she felt were degrading. That resistance came with risk, fewer opportunities, slower recognition, but it preserved something rarer: control. When What's Love Got to Do with It arrived just a year later, her portrayal of Tina Turner became a cultural breakthrough, earning her a Golden Globe and an Academy Award nomination, validating years of restraint and principle. From there, her career expanded into iconic portrayals and global success, while her personal life remained grounded, married to Courtney B. Vance, raising a family building quietly. By 2026, she stands as both artist and symbol, still rising, still choosing. And perhaps that is her legacy, the woman who mastered strength on screen, first learned it in silence. Al Freeman Jr. as Elijah Muhammad. He played a man accused of betrayal so convincingly that audiences questioned where the performance ended and where the truth of power, faith, and disillusionment truly began. Albert Cornelius Freeman Jr., born March 21, 1934 in San Antonio, Texas, was 58 when he took on the role of Elijah Muhammad in Malcolm X, 1992, bringing decades of disciplined craft to one of the film's most quietly explosive figures. His early life was shaped by fracture. His parents divorced when he was 9, and he moved between Texas and Ohio, learning early how to adapt, observe, and internalize. Acting became not an escape, but a method of understanding people. Years later, after building a respected career on stage and television, Freeman was drawn into Spike Lee's vision, cast not for fame, but for the gravity he could carry without spectacle. In the film, he is the paradox, the mentor who becomes the source of rupture, the spiritual guide whose authority slowly fractures into doubt, creating one of the story's most painful emotional collisions. In real life, Freeman's turning point was not scandal, but limitation. Despite winning a Daytime Emmy in 1979 for his groundbreaking role in One Life to Live, becoming one of the first black actors to achieve such recognition, he never crossed into mainstream Hollywood stardom. The industry that praised him did not elevate him. Instead, he turned inward, dedicating years to teaching at Howard University, shaping future generations while quietly stepping away from the spotlight that never fully embraced him. After Malcolm X, his path remained steady but understated television theater mentorship, choosing legacy over visibility, influence over fame. He passed away on August 9, 2012 at 78. And perhaps that is the quiet irony. The man who portrayed a leader undone by power spent his life building others without ever needing it himself. Delroy Lindo as West Indian Archie. He spent decades in the shadows of Hollywood, overlooked, underestimated, until a lifetime of quiet persistence erupted into recognition no one could ignore far later than anyone expected. Delroy George Lindo, born November 18, 1952 in London, England, was nearly 40 when he appeared in Malcolm X, 1992, carrying with him a transatlantic journey that had already shaped his voice, his presence, and his patience. The son of Jamaican parents from the Windrush generation, Lindo moved across continents, first to Canada, then to San Francisco as a teenager, growing up between cultures never fully rooted in one place. That sense of displacement sharpened his observation of people. Acting came through discipline, not luck, and when Spike Lee assembled his cast, Lindo's intensity and lived-in authenticity made him an inevitable choice. In the film, he embodies danger with elegance. The criminal mind behind Harlem's underworld, a man whose calm authority masks volatility, becoming the force that collides with Malcolm's earliest ambitions and illusions. Yet his real turning point came not in scandal, but in delay. For years after Malcolm X, despite powerful performances in films like Crooklyn and Clocker's, mainstream recognition remained just out of reach. The industry noticed but did not reward. Time passed. Roles came and went. Then decades later, Da 5 Blood's 2020 reignited everything, earning him widespread acclaim, and eventually his first major awards recognition, including an Academy Award nomination in his 70s. The weight of that moment wasn't just success, it was vindication. His life after the film became a slow-burning ascent. Steady collaborations, a stable family with Nashorme Lindo, and a career built on resilience rather than hype. By 2026, he stands not as a fleeting star, but as something rarer, a late-blooming force. The man who waited in the background for decades became impossible to overlook when it mattered most. Albert Hall as Baines. He spent a lifetime shaping other men's transformations on screen, yet remained almost invisible to the fame he helped build, a quiet force behind some of cinema's most defining moments. Albert W. Hall, born November 10, 1937 in Brighton, Alabama, was in his mid-50s when he portrayed Baines in Malcolm X, 1992, bringing with him decades of disciplined training and lived experience rarely spotlighted. Raised in the segregated South, Hall grew up in a world defined by limitation and expectation. Determined to move beyond it, he pursued acting seriously, eventually studying at Columbia University School of the Arts. His path was not meteoric, it was deliberate. By the time Spike Lee cast him, Hall had already built a reputation as a dependable, deeply grounded performer whose strength lay in restraint rather than spectacle. In the film, he becomes the moral architect, the mentor within prison walls who introduces Malcolm to faith, discipline, and transformation, embodying the quiet authority that reshapes a life from the inside out. But his real turning point came in a quieter form of struggle permanence without recognition. Despite appearing in culturally significant works like Apocalypse Now, and respected television dramas such as The Practice Hall, never crossed into mainstream stardom. He became the actor audiences trusted but rarely celebrated. That paradox defined his career essential yet peripheral. And over time, the absence of public acclaim became its own kind of weight, one he carried without bitterness, choosing consistency over visibility. After Malcolm X, his career continued steadily across film and television, never chasing the spotlight, never abandoning the craft. Personal details remained largely private, as if he had chosen to let the work speak in place of the man. By 2026, at 88, he has long stepped away from acting. And perhaps that is his legacy, the man who helped transform stories on screen, never needed the world to notice he was the one doing it. Spike Lee as Shorty. He built a career confronting truth on screen, yet one misjudged moment off-screen nearly reshaped his public image, raising questions about the cost of speaking too loudly in a divided world. Shelton Jackson Spike Lee, born March 20th, 1957 in Atlanta, Georgia, was 35 when he stepped into the role of Shorty in Malcolm X. 1992, balancing dual identities as both director and performer. His childhood unfolded between Atlanta and Brooklyn, shaped by a jazz musician father and a culturally rich, politically aware household. That environment sharpened his voice early. Filmmaking wasn't accidental, it was inevitable. When Malcolm X came to life, Lee didn't just cast himself for convenience. He placed himself inside the story, grounding Malcolm's early years with a familiar human presence. In the film, Shorty becomes the comic heart, the loyal friend who reflects Malcolm's youthful recklessness, offering moments of levity before the weight of transformation takes over. But Lee's real-life turning point came through controversy, not collapse. Over the years, his outspoken commentary on race, politics, and culture sparked backlash, most notably a 2012 incident involving a mistaken address tied to the Trayvon Martin case, which forced public correction and reflection. These moments didn't end his career, but they tested its resilience, exposing the fine line between voice and consequence. After Malcolm X, Lee continued to define modern cinema, earning an Academy Award for Black Klansman and shaping narratives that refused to stay silent while building a lasting family life with Tanya Lewis Lee. By 2026, he remains a force active, provocative, and unfiltered. And perhaps that's the paradox: the man who gave others a voice never learned how to quiet his own. Theresa Randle as Laura. She disappeared from the spotlight just as quietly as she entered it, until a sudden injury decades later forced her back into view, not as a star, but as something far more fragile. Theresa Randle. Born December 27, 1964 in Gary, Indiana, was only 27 when she appeared as Laura in Malcolm X. 1992, bringing a soft, fleeting presence to a story defined by intensity and transformation. Little is publicly known about her early struggles, but her path into acting reflected persistence rather than privilege. Trained in performance and gradually building small roles, she found herself cast in Spike Lee's film at a moment when her career was just beginning to open. It wasn't luck, it was timing, meeting readiness. In the film, she represents innocence, the emotional echo of Malcolm's early life in Boston, a reminder of tenderness before the descent into crime and chaos reshaped everything. Her real turning point came much later, far from Hollywood's attention. After a steady career through the 1990s, including roles in the Bad Boys franchise and films like Space Jam, Randall gradually stepped away from the industry. Then, in 2023, reports surfaced that she had suffered a serious leg injury, leaving her reliant on a walker while navigating daily life in Los Angeles. The contrast was stark, once part of major productions, now facing a quieter, more vulnerable reality. After Malcolm X, her career never fully disappeared, but it softened, faded choosing distance over visibility. By 2026, she lives largely out of the public eye. And perhaps that is the quiet truth. The woman who once captured a moment of youthful love on screen became a memory just as fleeting in real life. Kate Vernon as Sophia. She stepped into a role that challenged racial boundaries on screen, but off-screen, her life would unfold far from scandal, shaped instead by legacy, quiet endurance, and the weight of expectation. Catherine Elizabeth Vernon. Born in 1961 in Toronto, Canada, was around 31 when she portrayed Sophia in Malcolm X, 1992, bringing complexity to a character rooted in one of the film's most controversial dynamics. The daughter of actor John Vernon, she grew up surrounded by the industry, relocating to Los Angeles at just 7 years old. Acting wasn't a sudden dream, it was an inherited language. Yet breaking through on her own terms required persistence. Her casting in Malcolm X came not from fame, but from her ability to embody contradiction, charm, and tension, intimacy, and danger. In the film, she becomes the spark of conflict, the embodiment of forbidden connection, reflecting both Malcolm's vulnerability and the racial tensions simmering beneath the surface of his early life. Her real turning point, however, wasn't defined by controversy, but by transition. While she maintained a steady presence in television and film, her career never exploded into mainstream stardom. Instead, she found longevity in reinvention, most notably as Ellen Tigh in Battlestar Galactica, where her performance earned critical respect and a new audience decades after Malcolm X. After the film, her path remained consistent roles in series like The 100 and The Morning Show, alongside a private personal life, including motherhood and a long-term relationship with Chuck Negron. By 2026, she continues to work steadily. And perhaps that is her quiet legacy, the woman who once stirred controversy on screen, built a life defined by calm persistence beyond it. Lynette McKee as Louise Little. She portrayed a mother shattered by racism and loss. But long before that role, she had already walked away from everything familiar, chasing a future no one could promise. Lynette Rita McKee, born July 22, 1954 in Detroit, Michigan, was in her late 30s when she stepped into the role of Louise Little in Malcolm X, 1992, carrying both musical roots and dramatic depth into a story built on pain and survival. Her early life was defined by movement and risk. She began singing at just 7 years old, but by her teenage years, she made a radical decision, leaving school before graduation and relocating to Los Angeles to live with her sister. It wasn't a guaranteed path. It was a gamble. Over time, she carved her place in both music and acting, eventually finding her way into Spike Lee's film through years of quiet persistence rather than sudden discovery. In the film, she becomes the emotional wound, the embodiment of generational trauma, a mother broken by systemic violence yet still clinging to dignity in a world determined to erase it. Her real-life turning point, however, was not marked by scandal, but by reinvention. While she never became a mainstream Hollywood star, she refused to be confined to one lane. From earning a Tony nomination for Showboat to writing music and later directing her own film, Dream Street 2010, McKee continuously reshaped her identity, moving between disciplines without losing her voice. After Malcolm X, her career remained steady, but selective, balancing stage, film, and personal exploration, largely outside the spotlight. By 2026, she continues her work quietly. And perhaps that is her truth. The woman who portrayed a life broken by history chose to write her own beyond it. Tommy Hollis as Earl Little. He portrayed a man whose life was cut short by violence, yet his own life would also end too soon, quietly, almost unnoticed. Tommy Janer Hollis, born March 22, 1954 in Texas, was 37 when he appeared in Malcolm X, 1992, delivering a brief but powerful performance. His early life remains largely undocumented, much like his career built steadily without fame, through small but meaningful roles. His casting came from reliability, not spotlight. In the film, he is the origin of tragedy, the father whose death shapes everything Malcolm becomes. Off-screen, Hollis faced a quieter struggle, despite roles in Ghostbusters and Leon. The professional recognition never followed. In 2001, he died at 47 from diabetes complications. He left behind no scandal, no headlines, only a quiet legacy. The man who played a life cut short lived one just as brief. Ernest Thomas as Sidney. He was once a familiar face of American television, then slowly became someone audiences remembered, but rarely saw again. Ernest Thomas, born in 1949 in Indiana, was around 43 when he appeared in Malcolm X 1992, bringing quiet loyalty to a supporting role. His early life remains largely private, but his career began with steady effort rising to recognition through what's happening before transitioning into film. In Malcolm X, he represents stability, the loyal companion who stands beside Malcolm in his later transformation. After early success, his career gradually slowed. No scandal, no collapse, just time moving on, leaving him behind the spotlight. By 2026, at 77, he lives quietly. The man who once made audiences laugh now exists mostly in memory. Jean-Claude Lamar as Benjamin 2X. He started as a quiet figure in a powerful story, then risked everything to tell one of his own, knowing it might divide audiences. Jean-Claude Lamar, born in 1965 in Brooklyn, was just 26 when he appeared in Malcolm X 1992, portraying Benjamin 2X with calm, disciplined presence. Raised in Brooklyn and trained in political science, his path into film was shaped by questions of identity and power. His casting felt natural. He wasn't acting the world of the film, he understood it. In the story, he represents loyalty, the inner circle that protects and sustains a movement from within. His real turning point came later behind the camera. With Color of the Cross, he reimagined Jesus as black, a bold, controversial choice that sparked debate and challenged tradition. It wasn't just filmmaking, it was confrontation. After that, he focused on independent cinema telling Haitian-American stories away from Hollywood's spotlight. By 2026, he continues creating quietly. The man who once stood behind a leader chose to lead his own narrative. Behind every performance in Malcolm X, there's a deeper truth: fame doesn't define legacy, choices do. Some rose to the top, some faded quietly, but each carried a story shaped by pressure, identity, and time. So what matters more, impact in a single role, or the life lived after the spotlight fades? And which story shocked you the most? Tell me in the comments and let me know which film or cast you want next. If you want more untold stories, hidden truths, and powerful journeys from Hollywood's past, follow Legends of Classic Hollywood. And don't just watch, stay curious.